The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Lily scrubbed the last of the breakfast dishes. Her hands were red and raw, but she worked quickly, knowing Mrs. Miller would inspect her work before the hour was up. At 23, Lily had spent 5 years in service to the Miller family, one of the wealthiest merchant families in the coastal city of Westport. "Lily, are you finished with those dishes yet?" Mrs. Miller's sharp voice called from the hallway. "We have important guests coming tonight, and everything must be perfect." "Yes, ma'am." "Just finishing now," Lily replied, drying her hands on her apron. Her simple blue dress was faded but clean, her brown hair pulled back in a tight bun that showed off her clear skin and bright eyes. Mrs. Miller entered the kitchen, her silk dress rustling as she moved. "The Aldorian delegation will be here at 7. The master says these people are very important, royalty, even. Prince James himself will be at our table." Her voice filled with pride. Lily nodded, trying to hide her curiosity. Everyone had heard of the wealthy kingdom of Aldoria and its handsome prince, but few common people ever saw royalty in person. "You'll help serve tonight," Mrs. Miller continued. "Keep your eyes down, speak only when spoken to, and for heaven's sake, don't drop anything." "Yes, ma'am," Lily said, though inside she felt a small thrill. At least serving meant she could see these foreign visitors up close. The day passed in a blur of polishing silver, arranging flowers, and preparing the dining room. By evening, the Miller home shone like a jewel, and Lily had changed into her best serving dress, still plain but at least newer than her daily wear. At precisely 7, carriages began arriving. From the kitchen, Lily peeked out to see finely dressed men and women entering the house. Then came a group surrounded by guards, the royal party. Lily caught a glimpse of a tall man with broad shoulders and dark hair before Mrs. Miller pulled her back to her duties. When dinner was served, Lily moved quietly around the table, filling wine glasses and removing plates. She kept her eyes lowered as instructed, but she couldn't help stealing glances at the foreign prince. His voice was deep and pleasant, his laugh genuine among the forced politeness of the other guests. Disaster nearly struck when Mr. Miller's business partner, after too much wine, knocked over a glass that threatened to spill red wine on Lady Isabel, an elegant woman who seemed to be part of the prince's party. Without thinking, Lily lunged forward, catching the glass with one hand while smoothly sliding a napkin under it with the other. The table fell silent. Lily froze, suddenly aware all eyes were on her. "Well done," said a voice that made her look up despite herself. Prince James was watching her, his blue eyes meeting hers directly. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. "Thank you, Your Highness," she murmured, dropping into a curtsy before backing away. "What is your name?" he asked, stopping her retreat. "Lily, Your Highness." He smiled, and Lily felt her cheeks grow warm. "Lily, you have quick reflexes, Lily." Lady Isabel cleared her throat, placing her hand possessively on the prince's arm. "James, you were telling us about the summer palace renovations." The prince turned his attention back to his companions, but Lily felt his gaze find her several more times throughout the evening. Each time, a strange warmth spread through her body, a feeling she'd never experienced before. Later, as she cleared dessert plates, she overheard Lady Isabel speak to the prince in lowered tones. "You shouldn't encourage the help, James. It gives them ideas above their station." "I was merely acknowledging quick thinking," he replied, his voice cool. "Something I value in all people, regardless of station." Lily smiled to herself as she carried plates to the kitchen. She knew nothing would ever come of this night, of the prince's kind words or the way his eyes had met hers. Tomorrow, he would be gone back to his royal world, and she would still be here, washing dishes and making beds. But for tonight, just for tonight, she allowed herself to imagine a different life, where a look from a prince could mean something more than passing courtesy. As the evening ended and the guests departed, Lily caught one last glimpse of Prince James. To her surprise, he was looking directly at her again, a thoughtful expression on his face. He gave her a small nod before stepping into his carriage. That night, as Lily lay in her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, she couldn't stop her heart from racing at the memory of those blue eyes. "Foolish girl," she whispered to herself. "Dreams like that aren't for people like you." But despite her self-scolding, she fell asleep with a smile on her lips, the prince's face the last image in her mind before dreams took her. A week had passed since the dinner with the Aldorian delegation, and Lily had almost convinced herself that the moment with Prince James had been nothing special. She was back to her daily routine. Washing, cleaning, serving, the brief excitement of that night fading like a pleasant dream. It was a warm afternoon when everything changed. Lily was hanging laundry in the garden when she heard the clatter of hooves on the cobblestone driveway. Curious, she peeked around the corner to see a royal messenger dismounting from a magnificent horse. The messenger spoke briefly with Mr. Miller at the door before Mr. Miller called for his wife. Their hushed conversation carried hints of surprise and concern. Then Mrs. Miller hurried to the garden, her face flushed with excitement. "Lily, come quickly. Make yourself presentable," she ordered, looking Lily up and down with a critical eye. "What's happening, ma'am?" Lily asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "A royal messenger, for you. From Prince James himself." Mrs. Miller could barely contain herself. "Heaven knows what you did to catch his attention, but you're to go to the royal villa immediately. I'll lend you my daughter's blue dress. We can't have you representing our household in servant's clothes." Lily's heart pounded as she changed into the borrowed dress, which was finer than anything she'd ever worn. The fabric felt smooth against her skin, and when she caught her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. With her hair loosened from its tight bun and the blue of the dress bringing out the color of her eyes, she looked almost pretty. The royal carriage took her through the city to the coastal villa where the Aldorian delegation was staying. With each turning of the wheels, Lily's anxiety grew. Why would the prince send for her? What could he possibly want with a housemaid? The villa was the most beautiful building Lily had ever seen, with white marble columns and gardens overlooking the sea. A stern-faced steward led her through hallways decorated with paintings and tapestries, until they reached a sunlit room with large windows facing the ocean. Prince James stood by one of these windows, his tall figure outlined against the bright light. He turned when she entered, and Lily dropped into a deep curtsy, her eyes lowered. "Your Highness," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "Lily," he said warmly, "please stand. There's no need for such formality when we're alone." She rose slowly, still not meeting his eyes. "You wish to see me, Your Highness?" James moved closer, and the scent of him, clean linen and something spicy, made her senses swim. "I did. I've been thinking about you since the dinner at the Millers." Now Lily looked up in surprise and found him watching her with the same intensity she remembered from that night. "About me, sir?" He smiled, the expression transforming his handsome face. "You handled that potential disaster with such grace. And I noticed other things too. How efficiently you moved, how attentive you were to everyone's needs without being intrusive." Lily blushed under his praise, not knowing how to respond. "I have a proposition for you," James continued, gesturing for her to sit on a nearby chair. When she hesitated, he added gently, "Please, I insist." She perched on the edge of the seat while he sat across from her, their knees almost touching. The closeness made her breath quicken. "My sister, Princess Eleanor, is in need of a personal attendant, someone intelligent, discreet, and capable. I believe you would be perfect for the position." Lily's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just a housemaid, Your Highness. I know nothing of royal service. You would learn, and you would be well compensated." His blue eyes held hers. "It would mean leaving your homeland, coming to Aldoria. The palace would be your home." A mixture of fear and excitement filled Lily. Leave everything she knew? Go to a foreign land? Yet the thought of staying at the Millers, living out her days as a servant with no hope for anything more, suddenly seemed unbearable. "Why me?" she asked softly. "There must be many qualified women in Aldoria." Something flickered in James's eyes, something he seemed reluctant to name. "Let's just say I trust my instincts, and they tell me you belong in Aldoria." The way he said belong made Lily's skin tingle. There was meaning behind his words, something unspoken that passed between them like a current. I would need to speak with the Millers," she said, trying to think practically despite the emotions swirling inside her. The journey across the sea to Aldoria had been like something from a dream. Lily had spent most of it on deck, watching the waves and wondering if she had made the right decision. When the ship finally docked at the capital port, her breath caught at the sight of the royal palace rising above the city, a massive structure of white stone and glittering windows that seemed to touch the clouds. Now, a week later, Lily still felt overwhelmed. Her new quarters were larger than the entire servants' area at the Millers. She had her own bedroom, a small sitting area, and even a private bath, luxuries she had never imagined having. Her new wardrobe, provided as part of her position, contained dresses finer than anything Mrs. Miller owned. "The princess will see you now," said Marta, an older servant who had been helping Lily adjust to palace life. She led Lily through corridors decorated with tapestries and paintings to Princess Eleanor's private chambers. The princess was seated at her dressing table, her golden hair falling in waves down her back. She was beautiful, with the same blue eyes as her brother, though hers held a touch of sadness Lily couldn't place. "Your Highness," Lily curtsied deeply. "Thank you for accepting me into your service." Eleanor studied Lily with curiosity. "My brother seems quite convinced of your capabilities. He rarely takes such interest in household matters." Lily felt her cheeks warm. "I will do my best to prove worthy of his recommendation, Your Highness." "I'm sure you will." Eleanor smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Your duties will include managing my schedule, attending to my personal needs, and accompanying me to social functions. I value loyalty and discretion above all else. You can trust me completely, Your Highness." "Good. You may begin by helping me dress for dinner. We have important guests tonight." As Lily helped the princess select a gown and arranged her hair, she found Eleanor pleasant but reserved. There was a wall around the princess that Lily sensed would not be easily breached. Later that evening, Lily accompanied Eleanor to the grand dining hall. Her position required her to stand nearby, ready to attend to the princess's needs, but otherwise invisible. It was there she saw Prince James for the first time since arriving in Aldoria. He entered with his father, King William, both men commanding attention without effort. James was even more handsome than Lily remembered, dressed in formal attire that emphasized his broad shoulders and strong build. Their eyes met briefly across the room, and he gave her a small nod of recognition that sent heat flooding through her body. Beside James walked a woman Lily recognized as Lady Isabel from the dinner at the Millers. She clung to the prince's arm possessively, her beauty as sharp and cold as a winter morning. Throughout the dinner, Lily caught James looking in her direction several times. Each glance was brief but intense, making her heart race. Once, when Lady Isabel was engaged in conversation with another guest, James moved to where Lily stood partially hidden behind a column. "How are you settling in?" he asked quietly, his voice sending shivers down her spine. "Very well, Your Highness. Thank you for this opportunity." Lily kept her eyes lowered, aware of the other servants watching curiously. "Do you find my sister good to work for?" "The princess is most kind," Lily answered diplomatically. James smiled, seeing through her careful response. "Eleanor takes time to warm to people, but she's loyal once she does." He paused, then added in an even lower voice, "I'm glad you're here, Lily." Before she could respond, Lady Isabel appeared at his side, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. "James, darling, your father is asking for you." James straightened. "Of course, if you'll excuse me, Lily." As they walked away, Lily heard Lady Isabel whisper, "That's the maid you brought from across the sea. She's prettier than you described. Should I be concerned?" James' response was too low to hear, but the tension in his shoulders was visible. Later that night, as Lily helped Eleanor prepare for bed, the princess suddenly asked, "What do you think of my brother?" Caught off guard, Lily fumbled with the hairbrush in her hand. "The prince seems very kind, Your Highness." Eleanor gave her a measuring look. "Be careful, Lily. My brother may show interest in you, but he is promised to Lady Isabel. Their marriage will secure an important alliance for Aldoria." A month passed, and Lily settled into her role as Princess Eleanor's attendant. The princess had gradually warmed to her, even sharing occasional smiles and confidences. But Lily's thoughts remained troubled by her growing feelings for Prince James, feelings she knew she should not have. One rainy afternoon, Eleanor dismissed Lily early, wanting to rest alone. With unexpected free time, Lily wandered to the palace library, a vast room with shelves stretching from floor to ceiling. She loved to come here when her duties allowed, losing herself in books she never had access to before. The library was empty that day, the rain pattering against tall windows creating a peaceful atmosphere. Lily climbed one of the rolling ladders to explore the highest shelves, where older, less used volumes were kept. As she ran her fingers along dusty spines, one book caught her attention, not for its title, but because it was wedged at an odd angle, as if hastily pushed back. Curious, she pulled it free and nearly dropped it when a smaller book tumbled out from behind it. Lily caught the falling item, a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. She opened it carefully and gasped at the handwritten name inside, Margaret Wilson. Wilson had been her mother's maiden name. Heart racing, Lily descended the ladder and sat in a window alcove, opening the journal with trembling hands. The first entry was dated 25 years ago. Today I arrived at the palace to serve as lady-in-waiting to Princess Catherine. The journey from the northern province was long, but worth it to see Aldoria's capital. Lord Richard was kind enough to greet me personally, though protocol hardly required the king's brother to welcome a minor noblewoman like myself. Lily nearly dropped the journal. Her mother, a noblewoman, serving in this very palace, it couldn't be possible. Her mother had never spoken of Aldoria, had raised Lily alone after her father died when she was an infant. Yet the dates matched. This was written just a year before Lily was born. She read entry after entry, learning how her mother had become close to Lord Richard, the king's younger brother, how they had fallen in love despite his being promised to a foreign princess for political alliance. The final entries spoke of their plan to flee together. Richard says we must leave tomorrow. The king has discovered our love and is furious. If we stay, they will send me away and force Richard to honor his betrothal. We will escape to the coastal kingdom across the sea where no one knows us. We will live simply, but we will be together. The journal ended there. Lily sat frozen, her mind reeling. If this was true, then her father had been Lord Richard, the king's brother, which would make her a fascinating read. Lily jumped, clutching the journal to her chest. Lord Thomas stood watching her, his expression unreadable. I was just, she stammered. He moved closer, glancing at the journal. May I? He asked, holding out his hand. Reluctantly, Lily surrendered it. Lord Thomas opened it, his eyes widening slightly as he read the name. Margaret Wilson, he murmured. I thought you looked familiar when we first met. You have her eyes. He looked up sharply. Did you know? Lily shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. My mother never spoke of Aldoria. She told me my father was a merchant who died at sea before I was born. Lord Thomas sat beside her, still holding the journal. Margaret was a lovely woman, from a respectable northern family. Not high enough for the royal family standards, but well regarded, he sighed, and Lord Richard was the king's beloved younger brother. Their love caused quite the scandal. Then it's true? Lily asked, her heart pounding. It appears so, he said thoughtfully. They disappeared one night. The king was furious. He sent guards to find them, but they were gone. Eventually word came that Richard had died in a shipwreck. We assumed Margaret died with him. Lily shook her head. She raised me alone until 5 years ago, when fever took her. A thought struck her. Does that mean I'm related to the royal family? Yes, though distantly. Lord Richard was the king's half-brother, same father, different mothers. Without legal recognition, you have no claim to anything, of course. His eyes gleamed with something Lily couldn't identify. But blood is blood. A noise at the library entrance made them both look up. Prince James stood there, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. Lord Thomas? Lily. What's going on here? Lord Thomas rose smoothly. Your Highness. Just sharing some palace history with your protégé. He handed the journal back to Lily with a meaningful look. We'll speak more of this later. After he left, James approached Lily, concern evident on his face. Are you all right? Thomas isn't known for taking interest in servants without reason. Lily clutched the journal tighter, uncertain whether to share her discovery. I'm fine, Your Highness. Lord Thomas was just helping me find some information. James's eyes fell to the journal, then back to her face. Lily, if there's something troubling you. The warmth in his voice nearly undid her. How could she tell him that she might be related to his family? That she wasn't just a common maid, but possibly had noble blood, his blood, running through her veins. Before she could decide, Lady Isabel's voice rang through the library. "James, there you are. The seamstress is waiting to finalize the designs for our wedding attire." James's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'll be there shortly, Isabel." He turned back to Lily, speaking quickly and quietly. "Meet me in the East Garden tonight, after the palace quiets. Please." Lily knew she should refuse. Meeting the prince alone at night would be dangerous in more ways than one, but with her world suddenly turned upside down, she found herself nodding. "I'll be there," she whispered as Lady Isabel's footsteps approached. The night air carried the sweet scent of flowers as Lily made her way through the shadowy palace gardens. Her heart pounded with each step, knowing she was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The moon cast silver light across the paths, guiding her to the eastern section where marble benches sat among rose bushes and ancient trees. James was already waiting, a tall figure silhouetted against the moonlight. He wore simple clothes, not his royal finery, making him look almost like an ordinary man. When he saw her, his face softened with relief. "You came," he said, his voice low and warm in the quiet garden. "I shouldn't have," Lily replied, but she moved closer nonetheless. "If anyone sees us." "No one will. The guards know I often walk here alone at night." He gestured to a secluded bench beneath a flowering tree. "Please, sit with me." When they were seated, close enough that Lily could feel the warmth of his body, James turned to face her. "Tell me what you found in that journal." Lily hesitated, then spoke quietly, revealing everything: her mother's true identity, her relationship to Lord Richard, and what it might mean about Lily's own blood. James listened without interrupting, his expression growing more intense with each word. "So you see," she finished, "I'm not who I thought I was. Not who anyone thought I was." James was silent for a long moment, then reached for her hand. His touch sent warmth spreading up her arm. "I knew there was something special about you from the moment we met, something that set you apart. But it changes nothing," Lily said, though she didn't pull her hand away. "Even if my father was the king's brother, I have no proof, and even with proof, I'm still not." "Not what?" "Not worthy." James moved closer. "Do you think I care about that?" The intensity in his eyes made Lily's breath catch. "You should care. You're the prince. Your marriage to Lady Isabel will secure an alliance your kingdom needs." "An alliance my father needs," James corrected. "I never wanted that marriage." His hand tightened on hers. "Especially not since I met you." Lily felt dizzy with his closeness, with his words. "James, we can't." But she couldn't finish because suddenly his lips were on hers, gentle yet urgent. The world around them disappeared. The palace, their differences, the impossibility of it all. There was only his mouth, his hands cradling her face, the thundering of her heart. When they finally broke apart, Lily was trembling. James rested his forehead against hers, his breath coming quick. "I've wanted to do that since the night at the miller's," he confessed. "I've never felt this way about anyone, Lily." "This is madness," she whispered, even as she longed to kiss him again. "What about Lady Isabel?" "I don't love her." His hand stroked Lily's cheek. "I never have. It was always a political arrangement." "And what am I?" "Another arrangement." The words slipped out before she could stop them. James pulled back slightly, hurt flashing in his eyes. "How can you think that?" "I brought you here because I couldn't bear the thought of never seeing you again. Because from the moment I saw you, I felt a connection I couldn't explain." Lily swallowed hard. "Is that why you offered me the position with your sister? Because you wanted me near you?" "Yes," he admitted. "Though I never intended this. I just wanted to know you better." He smiled ruefully. "Eleanor guessed my feelings immediately. She's been watching us both." "The princess knows?" Lily felt a flash of panic. "My sister is more observant than people give her credit for, and more supportive." He took both her hands in his. "Lily, I don't know what this means yet, your connection to my family, our feelings for each other. But I know I don't want to give up on us before we've even begun." "The king would never accept me," Lily said, reality intruding on the perfect moment. and Lady Isabel would destroy me if she knew. Let me worry about Isabel. As for my father, his expression darkened. His health is failing. He won't be king forever. For 2 months, Lily and James lived in a beautiful, precarious dream. They met in secret, sometimes in the palace gardens at night, sometimes in forgotten corners of the library, and once daringly in a hidden passageway James had discovered as a child. Every stolen moment was precious, every touch a revelation, every kiss a promise neither was sure they could keep. Princess Eleanor became their unexpected ally, arranging for Lily to deliver messages or accompany her to places where James would happen to be. The princess never spoke directly of what she knew, but her knowing smiles told Lily everything. But paradise could not last forever. The king's health declined rapidly, and with it came increased pressure on James to finalize his marriage to Lady Isabel. The entire palace felt the tension, with hushed conversations ending abruptly when Lily entered rooms, and Lady Isabel's piercing stares following her everywhere. It was Lord Thomas who warned her, finding Lily alone one afternoon as she arranged flowers in Princess Eleanor's chambers. "The Lady Isabel has been asking questions about you," he said without preamble. "About your origins, your relationship with the prince." Lily's hands trembled, nearly dropping the vase. "What have you told her?" "Nothing, yet." His eyes were unreadable, but secrets have a way of revealing themselves, especially in a palace full of watching eyes. He moved closer, lowering his voice. "Last night a servant saw the prince leaving your quarters." Ice filled Lily's veins. She and James had been so careful, but one moment of weakness, one visit that had lasted till dawn, could destroy everything. "What do you want?" she asked, already knowing there would be a price for his silence. Lord Thomas smiled thinly. "For now, just your awareness that I know, and when the time comes, your cooperation." He paused at the door. "Oh, and Lily, I've been researching your mother's marriage to Lord Richard. It seems they were legally wed before they fled. A quiet ceremony, but binding." He left her standing among scattered flower petals, her mind reeling. That night, Lily waited anxiously for James in their usual meeting place, but he never came. Instead, Princess Eleanor found her there, her face grave in the moonlight. "You must leave the palace," Eleanor said without greeting. "Tonight. Lady Isabel has convinced my father that you are a spy from a rival kingdom. Guards will come for you by morning." "But that's ridiculous." "I'm not. It doesn't matter what's true." Eleanor pressed a small bag into Lily's hands. "Here is money, enough to get you safely across the sea. My brother is being kept under watch tonight, but he left this for you." She handed Lily a sealed letter. With shaking hands, Lily broke the seal and read James's hurried writing. "My dearest Lily, they're separating us to hasten my marriage. Father is worse, and Isabel's family is demanding the alliance be finalized. I cannot fight them tonight, but I will find you. Go to your homeland, to the Miller house if you can. Stay safe, stay hidden. This is not the end for us, only a pause in our story. I love you more than my crown, more than my life. Wait for me. Forever yours, James." Tears blurred Lily's vision. Eleanor touched her arm gently. "You must go now. A horse is waiting at the east gate. The guard there is loyal to James." "Will you tell him?" Lily started, her voice breaking. "I'll tell him everything." Eleanor surprised Lily by embracing her. "He loves you truly, Lily. More than I've ever seen him love anyone. Don't lose faith in that." An hour later, Lily rode through the night, leaving behind the palace, her newfound identity and her heart. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, but James's words burned in her mind. Not the end, only a pause. 3 weeks later, Lily stood in the familiar kitchen of the Miller house. Mrs. Miller had taken her back with surprising kindness, though she clucked disapprovingly at Lily's foolish palace adventure. No one here knew of her royal connection or her love for the prince. Here, she was just Lily the maid again, as if the past months had been nothing but a dream. The morning sun streamed through the small window of Lily's attic room at the Miller house, waking her from restless dreams of palace halls and a prince's touch. 3 months had passed since her return, 3 months of waiting and wondering if James would truly come for her as he promised in his letter. Life had settled into a familiar routine, though everything felt different now. Mrs. Miller treated her with a new respect, impressed by her refined palace manners. Mr. Miller often asked her to help entertain guests with stories of Aldoria, but none of it filled the hollow ache in her chest. Lily was tending the garden when she heard the commotion at the front of the house, the clatter of horses, voices raised in excitement. Her heart leaped, then settled. There had been false alarms before, important visitors who weren't the ones she waited for. Mrs. Miller burst into the garden, her face flushed. "Lily, come quickly. Make yourself presentable." The echo of similar words from nearly a year ago made Lily's hands tremble. "Who is it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Lord Thomas from Aldoria, and he's asking for you specifically." Mrs. Miller was practically dancing with excitement. "Imagine, a royal advisor in our home." Lily's stomach tightened. Lord Thomas, not James. What did it mean? She changed into her best dress, a simple blue one that reminded her of what she'd worn the day James had first offered her a position in the palace. When she entered the sitting room, Lord Thomas stood by the window, looking much as he had the day they'd discovered her mother's journal. "Lily," he said, inclining his head with unexpected respect. "You're looking well, Lord Thomas," she curtsied, hiding her disappointment. "This is unexpected." He dismissed the hovering Millers with a polite but firm request for privacy. When they were alone, he handed her a rolled parchment, sealed with the royal crest of Aldoria. "His Majesty King James sends this with his compliments," Lord Thomas said, watching her face carefully. With trembling fingers, Lily broke the seal. Inside was an official document with elegant script and multiple signatures. Her eyes widened as she read. "This certifies that I, Margaret Wilson, was lawfully wedded to Lord Richard of Aldoria," she whispered, hardly believing the words. "Your parents' marriage certificate," Lord Thomas confirmed, "along with an official acknowledgement of your status as Lord Richard's daughter and rightful niece to the late King William." He paused, "and cousin to the current King James." Lily sank into a chair, the document clutched to her chest. "How did you find this?" "I've been searching since you left." The king was most insistent. A small smile crossed Lord Thomas's face. He can be quite determined when properly motivated. "James sent you to find me." Hope flared in her heart. "His Majesty has been looking for you since the day he took the throne. It wasn't easy. You left few traces. But yes, I am here on his direct orders." Lord Thomas's expression softened slightly. He never gave up Lily. But why the marriage certificate? Why this formal acknowledgement? Lord Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Surely you can guess. A king cannot marry a common maid, but a lady of noble blood with royal connections, that's another matter entirely." Lily's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her chest. "He wants to marry me? He sent me to bring you home, if you're willing." Lord Thomas hesitated, then added, "Not everyone at court will welcome this match. Lady Isabel and her family have made their displeasure known. There will be challenges ahead." Lily stood, straightening her shoulders. "I'm not afraid." For the first time, genuine approval shone in Lord Thomas's eyes. "I can see why he chose you." The journey back to Aldoria passed in a blur of anticipation and nerves. When they finally arrived at the palace, Princess Eleanor was waiting at the entrance, her face bright with genuine welcome. "He's in the throne room," she said, embracing Lily warmly, pacing like a caged lion. "He's been impossible since Lord Thomas left to find you." The great doors of the throne room opened and Lily stepped inside. James stood by the window, just as he had the first time she'd met him in the royal villa a year ago. When he turned and saw her, his face transformed with such joy that her doubts melted away. He crossed the room in long strides and swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet in an embrace that defied all royal protocol. "You found me," she whispered against his neck. "I would have searched forever," he replied, his voice rough with emotion. He set her down gently but kept his arms around her. "Lily, I'm not letting you go again. Not ever." With tender care he placed a delicate crown upon her head. "This was my grandmother's. I want it to be yours now." "I don't know how to be a queen," she admitted, touching the crown with wondering fingers. James smiled, love shining in his eyes. "You've always been a queen to me, from the moment you caught that falling wine glass at the Millers. you just needed the crown to make it official. As their lips met in a kiss that sealed their future, Lily knew the journey between her two worlds was complete. The maid had become a queen, not through magic or miracle, but through love that had recognized her true worth when she couldn't see it herself. And in the years that followed, Queen Lily became known throughout Aldoria for her kindness to servants and nobles alike, for she alone had walked in both worlds and knew the true value of each.